It is my privilege and honor to introduce our special guest speaker. I think I first saw Patricia Barnette more than 30 years ago when I came to a conference program. She, for years, spoke on the Book of the Dead. She had a reading when she was only 5 years old. Her family members had readings, and she's here today to talk to us about my family's Edgar Cayce Readings. Patricia Barnette, come on down.
Thank you. It's really a great honor for me to be asked to come today and share with you about my favorite subjects, and that's my family and the Edgar Cayce Readings. I've always said that it's until I come to ARE, I don't feel like I've come home. That this is where the people are that are interested in the things that I'm interested in, and they're not everywhere in everyday life that they let you know or reveal it. I think there's more out there than I know from these numbers that I've seen today. I know that there's a growth and so forth, but at any rate, thank you for being here, and I just love it, I really do. I knew that I was blessed because I had really good parents, and they were introduced, they knew people and socialized with some people that knew Edgar Cayce. And that in itself opened doors amazingly. And it was not a coincidence because when in one of my mother's readings, she asked the question, why have I come to my parents? And she had heard a lot about karma through her friends, and she was pretty sure she had something to work out with her mom and dad. And he said the answer was to meet those you have. And the interesting thing was that my grandparents, my mother's parents, lived only 2 blocks in Norfolk from the home of Esther Wynn and her sister. And they were, my mom attended, my father didn't, but my mom attended occasionally Group 1 that met in their home. And they were just wonderful ladies, they really were. And the amazing thing is to me that I was about 4 years old at the time, I think, and my mother carried me to the meetings with her. I always liked to listen to the adults. You know, some children are like that. I liked wherever the adults were, I wanted to be sitting in the room hearing what they were saying. And I still have visions in my head of those meetings and some of the women that were there. I didn't know all their names, didn't, retain that. But I was absolutely fascinated with the things that I heard them say. And I'm surprised at that age that I did. I don't know that a lot of children would, but I was fascinated to hear about dreams and visions and meditation and ghosts, things like that. It was very, very interesting to me to be included in some of that. I could never have guessed that when I was 15 years old, that I would be in Esther Wynn's study group. And I was until she passed away, and I have remained a part of various study groups ever since. So some 60-some years I've been in study groups. I say I should know a whole lot more than I know. I still, when we start over on book 1 again, I'm still learning. My books usually have a lot of notes in them, and I can't even decipher what they are. But every time I add something new. Esther herself, I must say a couple of words about Esther. She was wonderful. A mischievous kind of little lady. She had little eyes that twinkled, and she was always ready with some kind of little funny remark. And a very bright, wonderful teacher, and I loved her. I really did love her. A couple of things that I hold in my mind was that at some point, she and her sister went to a church. I think it was a Methodist church around the corner from their home in Norfolk. And at some point, the minister must have found out that she was involved with Edgar Cayce things. And he started giving the sermon that day and looked at her and said, "We have among us a sheep in wolf's clothing." And she thought it was hilarious. She was not offended. She just, every time she said it to anybody, she said, "Can you believe it? I'm a wolf in sheep's clothing." This little lady with her shock of gray hair, and she was just as cute as she could be, and those blue eyes. At another time, I remember that over the 11-year period of writing the Search for God book, she was, you see, the editor of the book. She was an English teacher and was appropriate to be the editor of the books. And they had no idea that it was going to work for 11 years when they said, "How can we get to be psychic too?" And he'd said anybody could do what he did. And Lord, did they know that they were going to be hanging in there for 11 years. But anyhow, she said that she got aggravated with somebody, I don't know who it was, in the group, which I imagine a lot of things came up from time to time and being together with them that long. And she got mad. And so she decided, "I am not going to go back. I'm just going to quit this. I'm going back and teach." And she had a dream that night, and a voice said to her, "And neither do I find thee to be altogether perfect." So she went back. She went back. She really did. She knew it was the right thing to do. And let's see, there was something about well, anyhow, it was another little thing I wanted to tell you about her, but I can't remember what it was all of a sudden. At any rate, my mother had several readings with Cayce. She had 5 physical readings from 1940 to 1943. And at a certain point, Edgar came up to her when she was helping the ladies with conferences and things at the building up on the hill. And he said, "I want to do a life reading on you." And he said, "There'll be no charge," but you got donations, you know, most of the time. And he said, "There'll be no charge because I want to do it. I want the information." Everyone knows now that Edgar was much more psychic in the waking state than he's given credit for. And I'd give anything to know how he knew and recognized people that you know, he had been with before. But it was strong, and he knew that there was some connection. So he gave her a life reading, and her life reading, let's see, she did one life reading, and then there was a follow-up to that reading. And my father had a life reading, and I had a physical reading. They really were regretful that they didn't get a life reading on me, but both of them asked in their life readings where they had been with me before. And there was 3 with my father and 2 with my mother. So, you know, it was helpful. And also in my physical reading, there were some remarks of talking to me as a child, not holding back, but talking about spiritual things. There's no question in my mind that it was exactly as it should be, and I have been told by a sensitive in recent times that I came into this life for the purpose of having this opportunity to study this information. You know, we have not been thus far persecuted in any way. And so we all have the freedom to come and go and study this information, and so far that has been well. Never know when that may not always be so. And I just think it's an absolute joy and privilege to be able to study this information. When people ask me, "What about this ARE place that you go to?" Some people think it's a church. And what is it like? And why do you like it? And I say, because in studying, after I let them know some other things, it's not a church, but the ARE tells me who I am, how I got here, and what it is I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel that I've been told I've had many lifetimes searching for the truth and gathering it up, and that in this lifetime I'm being given an opportunity to take the truth and organize it in my own thinking. Thank you, all the people that have passed on and whoever still does indexing, because it is one of the phenomenal things about the Cayce material in that it correlates. Here you've got over 14,000 readings, and it correlates what was said in this one and this one and this one down the line over the years, and you have wonderful, wonderful full information that way. My mother, when he was doing the readings on her from the beginning, he said much from which to choose. He made that remark 2 or 3 times, so that she was what you call an old soul. And I've told my friends that I've been told I was an old soul, and I say there's no brag about it, it just means I was a slow learner. So I hope that I can get it all straight this time, maybe, get it down on paper and get it right. Being an old soul, I think that in this particular life, she was ready to renounce the material, physical existence, at least for a while. And I had received by my own intuitive little voice that while I was, you know, an adult with her, that she needed to do everything just right as much as possible for the rest of her life. She lived till 92, because she wouldn't be coming back for a long time. And she had deserved that. She had deserved a rest, you know, from being in this experience, and had taken on a lot in order to get to that place. One of the most interesting things about him with the readings, in my opinion, is that not only could this man read the aura and the Akashic records of someone, but he had the ability to discern which lifetimes had the most influence on the present life. How in the world can anybody do that? I said, I'm like Sidney Kirkpatrick. It's, you get to the place where it's not what did he do, but how did he do it? You know, what kind of markings were there in his consciousness that made this possible, but nevertheless he did. When he gave life readings, I love the thing that he said on some occasions. This information is being given in the hopes that the individual might more nearly be able to accomplish that which he came into the earth to do at this time. And that is a great gift. You know, we talk about teenagers getting out of college or whatever, and they start taking trips all over the country or the world, and, oh, he's looking for himself. He's looking for himself. He's trying to find out what he's all about and what he should be doing and so forth. And people, those fortunate people that had this information given through someone that had been given that ability was quite a wonderful gift. I'm so pleased at that. She had these 5 incarnations, yes, 6, let me see, 1, 2, 3, she had 6 incarnations, 5 readings and 6 incarnations that he shared with her. And when he gave them, he started, of course, with the one before this, and the one before that, and the one for the others. So I've turned it around to go to the earliest first to share just a little bit. I'm not going to have time to share with you 6 incarnations, but I will highlight 3 that were major. 3 of them were with Edgar in his incarnations, and they were biggies. In early Egypt, 10,500 time, the readings that you're familiar, if you're familiar with them, the readings that talk about the genetic engineering that was going on during that time. And when these readings were given, and when we read that, those of us, you know, would read about the appendages being removed and the temple of sacrifice, the temple beautiful, and all these things, it just seemed a little bit like science fiction. And it wasn't something that you could tell anybody who wasn't interested in it, because they really think it was far out. But now, 2000, we have the genome mapped, and they're talking about doing all kinds of things, and have already been working on agriculture, that some we're not pleased about that they're doing that now. But anyhow, it's working with the genes again, so it wasn't far-fetched after all. My mother was the first baby that was born free of any kind of imperfections physically. And she was held with those people as a ideal, not an idol, but an ideal. and something to attain to, that they knew it was possible. Once they had cleansed a person, they felt genetically, that had some sort of imperfections, they would she'd be impregnated, and then the offspring, they would see if it had any of the leftovers or the hangovers of those imperfections. And in her particular case, she did not. One of the people that was in the study group originally with Esther Wynn in those early years when I was there from 15 on, had been told in her reading that she had the hindquarters of the beast of the field, a beast of the field. What in the world that was, we don't know. But she did have a little bit of something that was off-center with her hips in this life. I felt like that it had something to do with that. But anyhow, she was cleansed of that, and he often, the reading said, came in when she was here, or she would come in when he was here, and he would always help her health-wise in some manner in the incarnations. In that reading of Egypt, she was, as she grew up, she became an assistant to Edgar, to Rata. And right on through after he died, she worked helping people. And her name in the incarnation was Lola. But she became referred to as Shalmar. It meant helper, or helper of many. And she had asked in the reading about who did she know in these periods and whatever. And he said, who you didn't know, who didn't you know? Everyone knew you, and you knew everyone. She was that popular as far as being humble and helping and on, whatever needed to be done. All right, the next incarnation that was outstanding was with Joshua, which was an incarnation of Jesus, the Jesus consciousness, the Jesus entity, and she was an assistant to him, aiding in messages that were to be given to the different leaders of the children of promise and the various tribes. And it said in the reading that he came to depend on her. And she took to heart his premise of let others do as they may, but as for me, I will serve the living God. Her name in that time was Lee, L-E-A-H. I don't know if that was Leah or Lee. And she named me Patricia Lee. And so I always wondered where she got that name, or what, but most people named them Ann, Teresa Ann or Patricia Ann, whatever. Anyhow, she named me Lee. And that was a high point, according to what the readings had to say, spiritually and mentally for her, being with Joshua. I had been told with my little voice while I was an adult that she had a guide with her that was watching over her that was so powerful we would never believe who it was. I think we know. Okay, the Persian influence, she was with Yult in the city of Hills and the Plains, and that was an incarnation of Cayce Rata, who came back, and he could have left this system, is my understanding, if he wanted to, but he came back. And he was an adept at meditation, and it was in that lifetime that his son Zen, who was an incarnation of Jesus, perfected his ability of going within. And she was one of the Greek ladies that came in and was under his teachings and taught others all sorts of things about beautification, whether it was of the self or if it was for the home. She had all types of art and sculpting and so forth, so that she became known as a teacher of trades, and that was in that lifetime. So those three lifetimes pretty well hit the high points. There were other experiences, but the most outstanding, and I can only say, just because of time here, I can only say a little bit about it, but it was during the Lost Colony. And that was the one just before this, before coming in here. And of course the Lost Colony was called Lost because nobody knew where they went. When the ships didn't come back with supplies, they left. she was an Indian girl, not an English, with the settlers. She was friendly with the settlers, but was an English girl named Dove, and she met one John Bainbridge, and that was all she wrote. They became a couple, so to speak, of companions, and they traveled with the Indians that left the area and went down south during the wintertime to look out Mountain, Georgia, and eventually he brought her back to her tribe and to the settlers, and she met another Englishman that she became the wife of, and that man was my father in this life. And his name was, in the reading at that time, Henry Desmond, and my father's name in this life was Henry Danford White. And we've always laughed and said, maybe we have some of the genes of Governor White, you know, so of the lost colony. And eventually, my father, according to his information, was the one that, with a group of other men, that especially encouraged them to leave and give up waiting or they wouldn't survive. And with the Indians, they taught them how to live off the land, how to fish, and how to hunt. And they split up into 3 groups, and that was said, the explanation of it was in the follow-up reading, asking questions of what had happened to them. And if the ships eventually that had been held up, if they had come during the winter time or the times when the Indians had left the area, they wouldn't have seen anyone or known where they were, and it was just a mystery as to what happened to them. She and my father lived in Lookout Mountain, Georgia, in that reading until she was 56 years old, and she had 5 children. And in this life, when they married, where do you think they went for their honeymoon? Georgia, Lookout Mountain. And you know, there's nothing new under the sun, and we think we've got an idea that's never been thought of before, and here we're just replaying the same record with a needle in it, you know. I'm finished now with, I'm not going to go into any more of those, but I just want to say, if you listen to the news all the time and you get kind of depressed or feel fear or whatever, keep in mind that there was a woman that was told that she would live to see the greatest spiritual revolution the world has ever known. And she may still be alive. I don't know how old she was at the time, but she may still be alive or not. But I know that God has not given up on this planet, and He sure hadn't given up on us yet. We have a lot more times to live, I'm sure. So my mother was told, I think she was, like I say, a little depressed, and she was told in her reading, and I'll just mention this little book is in the bookstore. They're out of them right now. They've been around, you think, for years. It's called Think on These Things, and excerpt for encouragement was given to her at that time. I think it picked up on that she was ready to leave the human experience. And if you'll just bear with me for a few seconds here, and I'll read this little few lines to you. It said, "Be glad you have the opportunity to be alive at this time, to be a part of that preparation for the coming influences of a spiritual nature that must rule the world. These are indicated and these are part of thy experience. Be happy of it and give thanks daily for it." Think on these things. I think they're expecting some more of these books in now. Thank you for listening.